These are top 5 scariest alien stories ever told in Joe Rogan Podcast.
Nej, ja, vi lever is here. Ja, we some shit, but it's kind of so way. Nej, nej, så den här sticker så det går ja, så ja. Ja, så ja, nej, det kan jag ska se ja, nu vill jag så. Zero always running. Her so you then it must be vem så nu. Det från color with the ja, vi was. Wow, we up sailor right.
No, för det.
Wow, så. Wow. Those that was no matter those do me great this does it.
Det fanns hårt söker ner och upp för sidor på skeps. Här vet så söker dem.
Here's the president. 30 Scott made or number the water national screw nerdy zero nails in the back. Sile grill we look at those nails in the back and it must sit in yours. My one. Just go do still. You imagine there's gonna be the both means
Hofim Eric Loffer men da. He's your name child when jag at ja no fiblet with hot sök when jag in the year Eric Loffer from each color with spare the area says there's Neil and I got us. He looks all least mouth got it. So it's seen mouth as here it was name slov va snail I be there is scouch. Ja, no, stadsdecision. Stel Elvis. Ja, Rick Loff, stadsdecision. Stel is zo ideal ze er ook snurf nach. Zo. Maar het vaak raben zo hier. Dat as de wel sketches in het neem iets pas. Maar dat snurf dit jou zien elf Elvis wat ziel schijnig en her Boston area that I had a salad assisted crop, but persisted is you want to yeah, that and it's the year stay is 50. I don't remember night coffee on it. Well, because there you wasn't I
was not in my head right the way they all as it never spirit that's nest again because you scarce and yelled over yeah has a head you're right this
what and you would never aware that I know that was her all was that the brown says the elkervej the fleske it's on in akne self in it scarce in elvis no here say it's a higher and scarce in elver man the rocker and it must still last by it with the third elves right knife no say Nishkarid and the Evas Yewa either and yet no I
must read so looking at
but him worth my good Elis he's your name said Lila by and these will such he be him of myth must run nuts Manak must suit the surf and was so you that and they but on now me wasn't it? One it I your age that I should or like got me that that's it seal it in him make it through out in the sea because I must me after that then if I had I was your eighth for a man and I grow with that and if I said use your name that now so I if I was the first in the fun yeah what do you think yeah let's sweet
so quite
is by the so well so at now but it's was so him or bad nah him yeah the all other steers they're off and I well yeah or fucker for my dinner yeah no we used to yeah when I'm the nights morning and I said so out of lost you in it yeah nah looks let me make sure in galls and yeah my yeah I have galls away I says down him rots that wound was in that wood and you throw some the below still nah well still question the big looks you know and the feel what I can make sure questions yeah I can ask me is Tony nah who the rots is that her well I still dust it my love me see your knee så på I am innocent där the series so there my money. Het actually got so nice that when it's such an iller room in the still at maar sandwich. For work goes na got so she's no here step yeah her that when then sure never on left for those you'll sky and oh my love an axer enough all the wet this er karsten sjækle så wet hei
Well,
heard while like the rot snip the rot stick
I don't mean fire fish said yeah, the city seat was. Hey,
let's see so we were still in it on it yeah for us minute us then it must us stand that fish it's been actually and you know hurry oh and slam next give up those and the fire see it's so no I'd rather them the deal from the deal so yeah we'd rather them this year with it ma
snaps you said there's fat this isn't
ja Harry so Ellen eerst dan nu het die halve labba maar het fire dat maar ook een hartstikke en in is ja heeft sneeuw maar in is ja dat sneeuw dat zie je zelfs of mij staan nou ja maar sneeuw heb je onderzoek maar
get the skimbo.
Spiesje verdienen minem zodat je dat vaak voor ja nou zo waar ze niet ziet niet maar maar niet maar niet zelfs een spukse dat is waar je of het zo gedeel staat en niet werkt het zo weer over ram hier en de sheer ook ram het zegt dat de probeer en dan het must daar heen en dan with the favorite probeer and they assume we access those men remember when they girl be was with already else right I fire bitch said yourself so it
Go fast the fire good it was.
the last time that that I look at the draw horse no yeah well strap it now so we the alpha we got to see right or cross when you will keep it miss first so the swamp
Girl fire good girl. If it's sip some from us get me did
the alpha was yeah so and I need to alpha was me yeah so it was sent fast so when I got up like little walk of an axe so it
it's rock right
and on a year but yes they're ready right so where the walk was near shit the was had die woman raw in it was raw healers well they said the paddle so near el quad I
Ariel goes in every new yes remember still
and but I from us the I call bed house that must the house what the
yeah that the sky book our see remember oh you nickel we know you're serious the bags do my foot dinner if there was and smell you know what's lost we are what's this in the master yet yeah bro you know grow you know remember we know we one
first in the last yeah there is make it be okay up store but I've got heel a shin he now with their brother I'm the beat is nah her other bum the my he was in the shit and if not each set either from so when rather than så vidare. Ja, men så vidare på så så när det så vidare på så men snow and there's near there for så vidare. Har ju rest dem så sett man där med det så vad det skit nick out. Man det där så då ja rosen skit nick nu man slide up in there next to herself with the list near ilken ni her up slide up with that and then så jag gick sharp but de know det real well. He like det att han vill med det. Här där så då han vi har med dem så jag ser det snarare något så sett. Vad det är det. Ja, det där är bara att det one and she gets having it little shift. So with the real and I it's so we'll sentence me and Jack so in the same moment. Galen i Albert as it without going now her they get forward with in Haasfjouws in the Albert she and snusdelights near rest of them grow and you know her just so we know there was the bra but a lot of people don't want you there it will be so wet now and she throwing drove this wheel med fan ikke gjort snø nis jeg roll så da bærkset
Marks det
det er det sådan det ja så nej fejl og bærkset urket those with bærkset yeah that's nem form nej galen jeg kaldt the one membership sure enough morning the host they are in there we hope be I have not I fresh real and I feel was is no will it's no will but near real so the first area there get dollars years not was I need I was not the rock was so get flowers years the stay
none of ours you scenario and the scene was
and the shelf and then I'll give pocket that man it's you without that yes there was near it goes to the I he'll be help skinny yeah he'll it's neat now well me I'm just when him on wow so it well, so the service so these sticky her near ilk than it sure you know up sure if it is higher I put out and I could just see what that going in there that's no dog I'm on that's you want them the color that's we're gonna see I got in the web no nah yeah and actually near chiller muscle let's do it nice do it then I should yell leave him hurt by and not but make sure no so with him out this is you know right you do one you get one out now sure see years to lose them well an accident I sound they have but then I don't okay but it will see the crowd big ruts no and yeah when the coach is the rock and they're dash get all house around the podcast and actually over very well looks if rock and the girl not doing what so it well
my whole so when they're you're in his gall or you know street or the pass it this guy biggest
I was doing my first documentary back in 1997 when I was just naive enough to think I can get an interview with Steven Spielberg. We had a mutual friend involved, this woman, Janet, and she gets back to me and she's like, yeah, so Spielberg's definitely not going to meet with you, but he knows you're working on this UFO documentary. He thinks you should look into this landing case that happened in Africa at the school. And I said to myself at the time, and remind you guys that I was making a film on UFOs, and I dismissed it so quickly because I thought, there's no way that a mass landing with the sheer volume of eyewitness testimony at a school in broad daylight could happen and the whole world not know about it. So I just walked away from that story for about 10 years. 10 years later, I'm doing an event at the National Press Club with Leslie Kane, who was part of the article in the New York Times that came out in 2017. And she introduced me to this guy, Randall Nickerson. And she's like, oh, he's working on this landing case in Africa. Long story short, he's working on a film now. I think it's coming out next year, specifically on just that case. Dan Farah is producing it. And he said, I'm working on the case, and if you want to do something with me on it, a small piece, I could. So I got back into it. I licensed some of the footage that Dr. John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist that came and interviewed the school children on camera within a week of it happening. He unfortunately looked the wrong way in London, got run down by a car and died. So I contacted the Institute with the help of Randall Nickerson. I licensed the archival footage. We tracked down the witnesses today. We flew them in from all different corners of the world, brought them together. A lot of them were standing right next to each other. They came face to face, and one of the things I realized was that there were roughly 100 kids in the playground, broad daylight, aerial school, Rua, Zimbabwe, 1994, and they got within some of them within arm's length of these beings, and brought these witnesses together for the first time in 20 years. And a lot of them hadn't even told their significant others, just because they said they were tired of having to defend this. And I myself didn't believe it when I first heard about it back in 1997. And that segment of the film is the most, in my opinion, is the most powerful segment, because
It's very compelling.
you've got all these children saying what they saw on camera after it happened, and then you see them 20 years later, and then we go to Africa and we meet with the headmistress, or she was a teacher at the time. We meet with other witnesses. We go to the landing site. We talk to people at the school. That case is absolutely, and it was witnessed by lots of other people in and around the area for several days before it chose a school to land. Stephen?
It's so compelling because the children are all clearly, they're not actors. So as they're adults later, they're all talking about this moment, and it's like they had a religious experience together. Like they're all sharing it and talking about it, and you could tell it's like it's a deeply moving experience. If they were actors, they wouldn't have been able to do such a good job, because to convey the reality of that moment to them, to be able to have this interpretation of this event where they're all consistent in the story and they're all clearly still shook by this moment. It's really interesting, because if you had that scene in a movie, it would take like a really good actor to pull it off. And they'd probably need multiple takes. They'd probably want to get the best one. But those kids, the way they were talking about it and the way they were drawing it, you're like, wow, it really does seem like something happened to them.
I know how credible that the testimony of the children is, because my partner, Rebecca, she's never had much of an interest in what I do, making documentaries on UFOs. I do other things as well, but when I was reviewing in the studio the archival interview of the children, she just dropped off a cup of coffee and she stopped and went, oh my God, those children are not lying. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Because look, I ask your audience to don't take it from me. Just suspend judgment for a moment and imagine, hypothetically, if a UFO or several UFOs landed at a school in broad daylight in Rua, Zimbabwe, Africa, and interacted telepathically with nearly 100 school children. Not all of them had telepathic, but seen the incident. How significant of a story would you give that?
Well, not only that, they had the same message.
Yes.
What the telepathic message was that technology is a real problem.
Yes.
And there's things that people are doing with technology that are going to ruin the earth.
Yes.
And they were trying to relay this to children, which is very strange.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I mean, maybe they just thought they were adults because they were the same size as the aliens. I mean, do you think they knew that they were children? Do you think they understood that it was a school? I mean, this is all speculation, right?
But no, I definitely had to ask myself, look, during the production of the film, Paula Harris actually turned me on to another landing case that happened in Australia in 1966 at a school. And this time there were roughly 300 witnesses that saw a disc land right outside a playground in Australia. And we went to Australia and investigated that case, went to the landing site, talked to eyewitness testimony, people that jumped the fence at the school playground and ran over to where this thing landed. And then we even interviewed a guy who snapped a photograph of a disc, a Polaroid, back in 1966, 2 days prior to the incident. So it's very probably that we have photographic evidence, we have eyewitness testimony, and for the first time we've got testimony from a science teacher. So why do these things land at schools? It seems like, and I'm just totally speculating here, but it seems like if I were going to do that, it seems like a pretty benign environment. we've had testimony from military guys that we take a fairly hostile position towards things that penetrate sensitive military installations. And, so maybe, I'm just saying, maybe
It's safe.
Maybe it's safe.
Maybe
but
it's
we
safe
have
and-
to stop reacting to intrusions by UFOs as a threat. I mean, that's the whole thing behind this new task force. And as much as I respect, the task force, my colleagues and I want to cooperate with them to the extent that we can bring information or resources to what they do. But there is more. This should not be looked at specifically as a threat. I mean, with the phenomena that we observe, I mean, if they wanted to blow up those F-18s, they could do it, okay? Obviously, that's not what it's all about. And this idea of just labeling it all as a threat because it's unknown, that's a wrong idea. 90% of the information comes from the public, comes from children, and very, very little of it is made up. In France, I mean, the data we get, at the French Space Agency comes through channels where if people reported something that's found to be untrue, they are going to be called by the police.
When you hear about stories about these fighter pilots finding these objects in the sky that exhibit extraordinary capabilities and don't have all the signatures of traditional propulsion systems, what is your thoughts?
Generally, I tend to be agnostic to the topic. I have a lot of friends that are extremely interested in a lot of things that are out and about in the in the media and in the literature. But generally, I tend to be agnostic, and here's why. In everything that's currently out that people talk about and highlight, it's difficult for me to take the data and the evidence and then pull that into the work that we do in the lab with some of the different test devices we work with as we kind of explore the frontiers of where physics and propulsion might intersect. It's hard to take that and turn that into some kind of an action plan, if you will. So I'm certainly aware, like David Fravor, the experience that he had with, I think he calls them Tic Tacs, right? An amazing account. And there's multiple people that saw it, multiple platforms that saw it. And so to start with, right, I thought maybe there was a small chance that was just like we have stealth technology, right, where if you want to hide a plane, what if we had the ability to project something, right, through some mechanism where we could make people go where we wanted them to go, right? Because I know there's a technology that uses like two different lasers that triangulate a certain point in open air, and they put enough energy into a particular location that they ionize the air, and so it creates like a bright pixel. And so they use that to create three-dimensional displays that kind of look like they're just floating out in air. Now, they're not quite as big as what we saw described with the Nimitz encounter on the West Coast. So I thought for a little while maybe that might be something that we're seeing.
They can project plasma as well, right? Is that the same thing?
It's the same thing, right? So the two lasers intersect, they ionize the air, which creates a plasma.
And
right?
they can do this over long distances as well, right?
I don't know about long distances. I know they can do it over short distances. Okay. And so for a while there, I wondered if that might be something that could explain some of what
that makes sense.
What David Fravor and the group saw.
The only problem would be the radar, because I don't know if you wouldn't pick up that on radar, would you? Because it's not a mass, right?
So the plasma would certainly absorb a radar signal, right? Because it's gonna polarize any electromagnetic wave that tries to go through.
So it would show up.
It might. It might.
Would it be possible to make something that big, that's 20 feet long, out of that?
It's hard for me to imagine that.
Right.
But I think there's one piece of data that just came out in the last few weeks. I think David Fravor's wingman, Alex, I think her name is Alex Dietrich. I can't remember the name.
I think you're right. Something like that.
So she came out, and so in all the things associated with that particular encounter, right, one of the things I've been trying to figure out is how do they describe the specular surface of the Tic Tac, right? Because if it's these plasma pixels that I'm talking about that kind of creates a volumetric display, I would speculate it might be kind of a glowy looking thing. But I think Alex, in her account, described it as kind of a flat type of
like matte, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of torpedoed my working theory. So, but again, while it's amazing and incredible, and it's something that people want to go think about and go try and collect more data, it doesn't help me do what I'm doing in the lab. And so I think I kind of keep, my eyes dart every once in a while over to that particular topic. Oh, what's that about? That's interesting. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly agnostic as well. I bounce back and forth from being really excited about it to feel like I'm being duped all the time. Jamie and I talk about it all the time. I'm back in.
Right. Hal Puthoff, although he's got a lot of many and varied interests, he's a great physicist. He's published a lot of great papers in the literature just thinking about physics, right? He's got some stuff he's looked at called the polarizable vacuum. And so, in my drawer of preferred papers, I have a number of papers in there that are from Hal's work on the polarizable vacuum because I find that interesting and fascinating. And so there may be some things out there that are adjacent to the concept where you could try and pull some of that together, I guess.
That's a fascinating thing for you to say because Hal believes they have them. And he believes that we have 10 of them.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I know that. Yeah.
Which is just so nuts.
Yeah.
And then, he's a little agnostic on the Bob Lazar story. But the Bob Lazar story, which I'm sure you're aware of, is essentially what we're talking about. Like, you would bring in some out-of-the-box thinkers. And if you found some wildly intelligent young scientist who put a rocket engine in the back of a Honda, which is what he did, you would go, what is that crazy fucker up to? Like, let's have him look at it. What's it hurt?
Right.
The guys at Rocketdyne say he's a wizard.
Right.
Bring him out there. Or the guys at wherever he wasn't at Rocketdyne. He was at Los Alamos. The guys at Los Alamos said he's a wizard. So let's bring him out here. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, his story is I'm not too familiar with it. Right.
It's the nuttiest story of all time.
Yeah.
And he supposedly, they denied that he ever worked at Los Alamos, but then they found him on an employee log. And not only that, he knew the outline of the place. He knew the security people. George Knapp took him on a tour of it, and he knew everybody. He knew the people that worked there. He knew how to get around. Like, he clearly worked there. So that's interesting that they tried to deny that he ever worked there. And then from there, he gets this job where he is flown out to the desert to Area 51 Site 4. And this is allegedly, right? During this time, he can't even tell his wife what he's doing. So his wife thinks he's going having affairs. He's got to leave and fly away at 11 p.m. at night. Like, right, but you can't tell me where you're going? You want to work? Right.
Yeah, you're working late again?
The wife starts having an affair. And because of his
this
clearance...
almost sounds like a movie, right?
It does sound like a movie, which is one of the beautiful things about reality. Is that reality seems so fake that sometimes actual true stories are bizarrely fictional. So his wife starts having an affair. Because of his clearance, he cannot be working on these things if he could be under extreme emotional duress. So they fire him. They tell him he can't. They don't give him any explanation. They don't tell him his wife's cheating on him. He starts taking people out to the desert, explaining to them, you have to see what we're working on. They fly this thing on certain nights, and they do these test flights around the base. It's nuts. So he takes these people into this area. They see it. They get arrested. When he gets arrested, he gets caught there. He explains what he was doing. He says, okay, I've got to go public or they're going to kill me. So he goes public with George Knapp. Initially, they hide his face, and then he says, you know what, fuck that. Let's just film me. Let me tell you everything. He goes over the diagram of this device, and he calls it the sport model, and it looks like that. That thing that we have right there.
It's almost like a hubcap, right? But
exactly.
Gotcha.
That's a copy of it.
Okay.
In the middle of that thing is some sort of a generator that he said works on this unknown element, this element 115.
Oh, some of this is coming back to me. I think I've seen some stuff over the years.
Yes.
Yeah, some of it's coming back to me now.
And essentially the way he describes it traveling, and again, this is in the 1980s, the way he describes it traveling is exactly the way you describe that sort of warp drive, changing space and time around it. And that you would point that thing where you wanted to go, and it would just
Yeah. That it all sounds very surreal, right?
Yeah.
There's another story. Again, as I said, I have a number of friends that are keenly interested in this, and so I've been exposed to some of the different things. And that to me, the Tic Tac account is interesting because it's got a lot of rigorous data, if you will, that helps you go, well, I can't explain that. I can't explain that. I can't explain that. There is another accounting that I just put in the category, my brain doesn't even know what to make of it, and it's the concept of Rendlesham Forest. I don't know if that rings a bell. There's something over in the UK where there's a base over there, and some airmen came across some very weird. I can't even begin to describe.
I'm not sure if I know this one.
It's pretty bizarre. I don't know it well enough to unpack it today, other than to say it's so bizarre that when you listen to the accounts that were recorded, right, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, if you think about if you watch an octopus in an aquarium, right, and the octopus is doing something, you can sometimes understand what their motivation is. There's like a cross-species ability to. It's like communication, but without words, right? That octopus wants to go eat that little crab or whatever the case may be. And so our chemical computers, even though they're different, we can look at their behavior. And we can go, all right, I think I understand what that octopus might be wanting to do today, or a shark or a dog or a porpoise. But when you hear what happened in that Rendlesham Forest thing, it breaks all of my guessing machine. And it's like,
what is the story?
A colonel and some airmen reported some weird stuff that was going on in Rendlesham Forest. Yeah, and they went out and tried to investigate it, and they saw some. Again, I'm doing such a terrible job of summarizing it because I don't really know the lore very well. But
here it is, right here.
Everything they saw was very bizarre and crazy looking.
We can read it.
Right?
It says 40 years ago, a remote forest in Suffolk was the scene of one of the most famous purported UFO sightings in history. So, just what did happen? And will we ever know for sure? Victor Thurnkettle was out chopping wood one morning in Rendlesham Forest in late December 1980 when a car drew up. Out stepped two men, aged about 30, dressed in suits. "Good morning. Do you mind if we ask you some questions?" asked one in a well-spoken English accent. Earlier, on 26 and 28 of December, United States Air Force security personnel stationed at nearby RAF Woodbridge had reported seeing strange lights in the surrounding forest. Forestry worker, Mr. Thurnkettle, unannounced and unidentified visitors asked if he had been out the previous night. I said no, he recalls. They said, "Did you leave the house at all? Did you see anything?" I said, "What?" They said, "Oh, there's a report of some red lights in the forest. We're just checking." And the two men, very politely but firmly, asked me probably about 20 questions. I thought they were journalists. They suddenly said, "Oh, well, fair enough. There's probably nothing in it," and left. So I bought the papers every day for the next few days to find out what was going on, and of course, there was nothing. 3 years later, however, sightings made the News of the World front page story. It proclaimed UFO lands in Suffolk, and that's official. The story was based on a memo from RAF Woodbridge Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt to the Ministry of Defense. It was released by the U.S. government, described as an encounter with an apparent UFO in the forest. Since then, the sightings have been the source of much debate and speculation among UFO enthusiasts and the subject of numerous books, articles, and TV programs. In March, a documentary concluded the sightings had achieved legend status like the Loch Ness or King Arthur. The forest even has its own official UFO trail, complete with a life-size replica. Go back up. Of the flying saucer, and this is the replica with like the Hamza thing on it, that hand thing. Bizarre. Thurnkettle, UK authorities have said they didn't learn about the incident. Okay, but what is the story though? Let's get to what is the story? Scroll down more. What does it say?
Yeah, and that gets into the stuff that it doesn't make sense in terms of what they describe the UFO doing. It's just very peculiar, right? So.
Yeah. They got there, my heart absolutely plummeted. There was nothing. It was absolutely normal glade in the forest with 3 rabbit scrapes. They're all carefully marked. It happened to be roughly a triangle. Okay, what else does it say? What is the sighting? Burn marks on trees, but what's the sighting?
could show you what the UFO looked like, but they,
Okay.
I mean,
Sure. That's what they said it looked like?
Yeah.
Whoa. And it had those markings on it?
I Googled it. My Google search said that Grush brought it up when he was on here, but I couldn't find like even clips about it, so I don't know that we went that deep into it.
How bizarre is it that it has that symbol? What is that? That's an ancient Hindu symbol, correct? That Hamza symbol?
I don't know.
These are different symbols.
Oh, they're different.
Yeah.
That looks very weird. Huh. So what about this one stands out to you?
I put this one in the category of I don't understand if it's a real account, right? I mean, so I think when you have a lieutenant colonel that's reporting something as factual, I tend not to just immediately dismiss it.
Right.
But and it's not just him; it's several people around him. What they described, right, doesn't make sense to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in terms of the David Fravor talking about the Tic Tac, I can kind of, that's not totally alien to me. I could, it's trying to maneuver with the aircraft and it's maneuvering to their cap or whatever the case may be. And I can kind of connect the dots with that. But the Rendlesham Forest thing, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, what about it doesn't make any sense?
What they saw, why it was doing what it was doing.
What was it doing?
It just was out in the woods. It was out in the woods, with blinky lights and doing.
Please tell people your credentials, what your background is.
Sure. So, my name is Ryan Graves. I have an engineering degree, mechanical and aerospace engineering. I promptly left doing that to go fly F-18s for the Navy as soon as I graduated college. Did that for about a decade, both operationally in combat as well as in an instructor role, teaching the new students. And, we did witness something while we were flying in our jets, but we were doing it we witnessed it in the context of our just everyday flying and our missions.
And what year was it that you witnessed this?
So we started seeing these in 2014 was the earliest that I know. 2013, late 2013, early 2014.
And could you describe what was the very first experience?
Yeah, so for me personally, the experience was simply just flying out to the area like I would any other day. And instead of seeing an empty airspace with just my wing person or another squadron doing something a different block, there were all of a sudden a lot of different radar contacts, which is immediately a problem because, we could be hitting one of those or someone working in our area. And this was happening because we upgraded our radar the best we could tell. We were in a earlier radar called the APG-73, and we had come back from deployment. We entered a maintenance phase, it's called. We kind of do a little bit less flying, upgrade the jets if we need to, do any long-lasting maintenance, and we upgraded to the APG-79, which was a much better radar.
And what is the difference in the capabilities of the upgraded radar system versus the original system?
Mm-hmm. So, kind of practically speaking, it's like going from an analog TV essentially to like an OLED. It's, a digital modern tool compared to more of like an analog classical radar that has more limited range and has less ability to track multiple targets and things of that nature. So just generally speaking, we would expect to see, more objects if there were any out there or smaller objects, but there shouldn't have been any objects out there.
And so how far offshore are you when this is all going down?
Our working areas start about 10 miles off the coast, and then it goes out 100 or 250 miles or so, though we don't usually use those far eastern areas. But we would only see them over the water. So they would really only be in our working areas, maybe slightly in between the working area and land, but never over the land, sometimes over the bays that are in the area that are quite large. But never just kind of zooming west over land or anything like that.
And is this restricted airspace?
It's not. So that's a tricky question. For us operating in a military operating area, it is not restricted in the sense that you have to be, there's only one person allowed in there. You could have these little Cessnas kind of bumbling in there, but they would get called out pretty quick, both from the kind of air traffic control agency that's working out there, as well as the F-18s and the other aircraft that may be working out there. But in a broader sense, when we look at it in relation to our air defense identification zone, which is essentially a band of airspace that surrounds our entire country, if your flight path originates out over the water outside of that ATIS, and you proceed into that ATIS, into our controlled airspace, then you do have to essentially have permission to enter that airspace. It's not a restricted airspace like a traditional bombing range, but it is protected airspace. It's our coastal air.
So you have this upgraded radar system, and what are you detecting?
So on the radar, really what we can learn from that is essentially the kinematics of the object. So where is it essentially, and what direction is it going, how fast is it going, things of that nature. We can't necessarily make out the shape or things of that nature. So it's a representation. It's like a block on our screen to show that information. And so when we see that on our radar, we can tell, where it's located, perhaps what's located around it if there's other objects we're detecting, how fast it's going, what direction it's pointed in, what direction it's traveling in. So we call that velocity vector. So if we see this essentially little circle, it'll have a tail coming off of it. And that tail kind of represents the nose of the vehicle, at least as its flight path is going. And so with that, we would typically see an aircraft just kind of trudging along with a straight line, taking occasional turns. But these objects had a little bit more of a, I don't want to say random, but more less controlled flight path. That velocity vector would kind of jump around a bit more. They would not proceed in like a perfectly straight line as you would imagine like a flight navigation computer would take you, right? It takes you from A to B in the straightest line possible. These objects seem to kind of be moving in a direction that was not a straight line, but generally proceeding in that direction. And so they would kind of be meandering slightly, but moving in that general direction, both three-dimensionally and horizontally. So
winding around, going up, going down.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not on a flat plane, and they're not going in a straight line.
So I don't want to draw too many firm statements like that because we would see them being flat, too. We'd see them perfectly stationary up there, regardless of the wind.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. So what kind of wind are you talking about?
Oh, gosh. I mean, at altitude, you can have anywhere up to 100, 120 knots of airspeed.
What is that in miles per hour?
It's about 130, 140 miles an hour.
So they're completely stationary with 140 mile an hour wind.
Correct.
How would something do that?
It's confusing to me as well. Even if we had something that could just burn that much energy, right? Like if you had a sphere surrounded by little rockets, right? Just imagining something right now.
Okay.
And if you wanted to keep that perfectly stationary, right, against gravity, you could just fire all the rockets at the bottom really fast and hopefully keep it flat, right?
Right.
It's going to have tiny little variations. And then if you have wind hitting it and all this, you could potentially have those rockets try to counter it, but it would never be perfectly still in winds like that.
Because the wind's not perfully still either, right?
Exactly.
It changes and varies.
It does. So it's almost like it's the wind. It's not even really fighting the wind, it seems. It just seems like it's just there in a way.
Wow. So the first time you see these things, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the first time really was, well, what is this, right? It's not a UFO or something mysterious at this point. It's at what we're thinking at this point we see on the radar is just, well, our radar is broken, right? These perhaps don't represent physical objects yet because we hadn't, visually seen these or seen them on our camera yet. And so, we kind of like, hey, what's going on here? Is anyone else seeing this kind of thing? But not really like investigating it, right? It was just kind of like, all right, there was stuff out there, but maybe next time we'll take a look. But the way our systems work, when we have all these contacts on our radar, and if we kind of just select one out with our little cursor there, all our sensors go to it. Our FLIR goes to it, which is our camera system. All our weapons, they have like their own little eyes in some sense, and they all look in that direction. And so eventually, someone had one of these selected and flew close enough so that as they look at their FLIR system, their camera, they could see something that was at the spot represented on the radar, right? So there was something there.
So they were seeing it visually with their own eyes?
Not at this point, just on the FLIR system.
The FLIR system.
And so it's a regular camera and also an infrared camera. And so typically we'll roll around in infrared just because it returns a better image, typically. So yeah, it didn't look like an object they were seeing on the FLIR. It just looked like a source of IR energy in a sense, almost as if someone was shining a flashlight. But something had to be there to be reflecting that energy or creating it. So at this point, to answer your question, now we're like, okay, this isn't just an error in our radar. This is perhaps, we're thinking this is real. We have to really respect this as like a safety hazard now. Even if it's just a small, however small ribbon of tinfoil, right? Like that suck down the engine can still take out an aircraft, right? So we have to be very respectful of that.
Like a Mylar balloon type thing?
Potentially, right? Yeah.
But how fast are these things going?
So sometimes stationary, right? Sometimes they would be going around 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, which is at altitude about, 240 to maybe 330 knots, around there.
So somewhere in the range of an airplane.
Yeah, a fighter aircraft would be kind of flying around at those airspeeds, except sometimes they would be perfectly stationary as well.
Right. So it's not exhibiting any sort of patterns that you've recognized in the past.
No, they have actually. So,
But
although
with the stationary, no, right?
correct, with the stationary, no. With the meandering kind of flight path, no. But I would also see them essentially fly what we call a racetrack pattern. And essentially what that means is they fly in a straight path, and then they do like a 180-degree turn in a certain direction. Then they fly a straight path, then turn again. So that's what we call a racetrack pattern as opposed to a circular holding pattern. We did witness racetrack patterns. In fact, I think there's been some cases off the West Coast just the past couple of weeks where people have also been observing objects flying in racetrack patterns high at altitude with lights. So I do recognize that behavior, but I don't necessarily think that means we have to attribute it to normal behavior necessarily. That type of flight path is important because it's a very efficient way to fly, right? If you have to maintain the position in a certain area, you want to minimize how much you're turning. Because anytime you're turning in an aircraft, you're using more energy than if you were just flying straight and level. And so by having a racetrack pattern, it's an efficient way of holding in a position by maximizing straight and level time and minimizing your turn time.
And how long would these things stay up there for?
So from our experience, and again, we weren't studying these, but they were always out there. They were
Always.
out there when we took off, we'd see them, and then we go to land, they would still be out there.
Like every day?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
So you guys go from not having any idea that these things are out there to an upgraded radar system to seeing them every day.
Yep.
What is the thought? Like, how are you feeling when these, is there an evolution of the thought pattern of how you're addressing these things and thinking about them? Initially, you're thinking they're errors. When do you start getting a thought that, what the fuck is this thing?
Yeah. So that happened when we visually saw one. And the first time we visually saw one, the object was directly at what we call the entry point of the area. So, that box that I told you about in the sky that starts 10 miles off the coast, there's a particular GPS, location and altitude where incoming traffic will fly in and outbound traffic will fly in the exact same spot, but will fly out 1,000 feet lower. There were two aircraft from my squadron, VFA 11, and they flew, took off as a flight of two. That means they're essentially flying in a formation like this. And as they hit the area, one of these objects went right between the aircraft. The lead air crew saw the object. The Dash 2 aircraft crew did not, which is not surprising because they're usually, you're very focused on flying formation. You're just staring right at that aircraft. The lead really has actual leeway to look around. So he saw it, and, he immediately came back. I have to assume he didn't have it on his radar because he wouldn't have flown through this object at the entrance point. He turned around, flew back, landed, and I was in the ready room when he come back, and he had all his gear on, which typically is not a good thing because you want to get that stuff off as fast as possible. So usually means there's a problem of some nature, and he was just sitting there saying, "Hey, I almost hit one of those damn things." And we all knew what he was referring to, even though we didn't necessarily have a name for it, just because we were seeing these so much. And he described it. He described it just as a black or dark gray cube, and that cube was inside of a clear or translucent sphere. And essentially, the apex or the corners of that cube, best he could tell, were touching that inside of that sphere.
And that description mirrors many of the descriptions that people have had of these, whatever you want to call them. Whether they're calling them UAPs now for some strange reason. UFOs is I don't know, does it have a dirty connotation to it? And is it tainted because of so many crazy people talk about UFOs? Is that what it is?
It does come with a lot of assumptions baked in.
It baked in. That's, yeah. So that's something, but whatever it is, that is a design that people have reported seeing before. That this translucent sphere and this cube, can you see through the cube?
Not to my understanding, no.
So it's some sort of solid black cube that's inside this translucent sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just floating around and flying around the sky.
So, that's a good point. Is it floating around? Is it flying around? It's doing both, which is strange, right? Because you could think of that description and go, okay, that's kind of some kind of weird balloon maybe with stuff in it. And that's certainly, one way. If you just view that angle of it, then it seems explainable. But when that, the balloon-like object starts cruising down at, 0.8 Mach, that nullifies that particular idea. And you'll see that a lot where it's not just like that one picture, that one behavior. It's really, you kind of have to zoom out a bit and look at everything in relation to each other and say, okay, why is this weird? Okay, it was hanging out in a racetrack pattern. That's not exotic. But when you learn it was doing it for, perhaps 13 hours.
13 hours?
Perhaps they were out there all the time, So, I land and I go back. And we weren't on a Intel mission to analyze these, right? We're going to do our training. It's very expensive, $30K an hour to fly these things, right? So really the only time we can put energy into looking at these things is when we're kind of transiting back and forth or waiting for a fight to start. And so, it's never like a dedicated analysis.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
But anyway, that's where we were heading this one day. So we all packed up. We're in Beatty, Nevada, which is the Burrow Inn. I can tell you that's where we always hold up at. And we take off from there every morning to go do the AM and the PM push. That's what you call it when the war is on. You call it the push. So we had one in the morning called AM push, one in the afternoon PM push. So we were all heading up for the AM push in a convoy. There's 3 vehicles, probably about 3 to 4 people per vehicle. I'm in the lead vehicle with the ranking guy. He's driving, and I'm right behind him. And then there's another gentleman in the passenger seat across from the driver, and then there's a young lady next to me. And we're all going up. And the ranking guy had been there the week before, and he had seen the craft fly by. Because that one's out there on the internet. You can pull down the video. There's a report that goes along with it.
There's a video that we can watch right now?
Right now, yeah.
What would he search?
Search for, let me think, Nellis Test Range UFO 1994.
Dun, dun, dun. Who filmed this?
This was filmed by the operators on the range because we're putting these pilots in a risky situation by playing war with them, but we're training them. So if there is any kind of a mishap or a pilot or plane goes down, everything needs to be recorded. So
this is it right here?
Yes. So this video is being taken by one of these cameras that's up on the range. And along the bottom, you see that this is also trying to lock on to the craft so it can, follow it as it goes in and out, because this is the kind of way that you want to track if there's a craft that is having problems. And
This is moving very erratically.
Right. So this is what the ranking guy saw.
Can I pause you for a second? This tracking, is this manual or is this like some
It's
sort of an automated system?
It's an automated system.
So the automated system is having a hard time
locking on
to it.
Yeah, if it locks on, you'll see a big spike, and that means that it finally locks on. Right now it's trying to, but something is stopping it from locking on. And they think it was the craft.
It's moving like crazy, side to side, all over.
There's actually a recording that goes with it where you hear the guys going, "Hey, does anybody know what this is? What's going on here?"
Can we hear that? Okay, the sound is terrible.
Yeah.
They need better mics.
Honestly, that's the way it sounds when you're working up there. But anyway,
I'm sure. But he's saying, what is that? I don't know. We're having a hard time locking onto it.
Right. This is the video operator. So the following week after this happens, this video is taken, the ranking guy who had been there the week before and saw this thing flying, He takes us in this, when you go on the range through this one gate here, it goes up a little ways, and then there's a cantonment area. It's got a very small place where you can change your tires, get gas, just minor maintenance to get your butt home if you have a car that's busted. And then in the back of that cantonment area, there's 2 huts that look like campers, really, glorified campers. So the video operators are in the one that's off to the northeast of the cantonment, and in the very corner of it. And the ranking guy just says, we all have to go in here. We're going to go talk to the video operators. We have to do this. And this was because the week prior, everybody came back to garrison or back to our unit, and they had seen this thing, and they were all talking about this UFO. So we go in there, and there's the video operator. He has us all write our names down, whether we were there and saw it the first week or not. Then he makes us all sit down and watch that video. And he says, do you know what this is? And we're like, no. And then he just said, okay, thank you. And then we, after everybody that was there saw it and wrote their name down, we were allowed to leave. And that was all that was required. And so I was like, well, what was that all about? But then as I'm exiting, this lady that had been sitting against the wall on the far part of this little hut that we were in, and she like grabs my arm and she just says, there's somebody on the range, don't talk to him. And she was really, really freaked out. And I'm like, thanks, strange, freaky lady, got it. And I'm like, whatever. So we all hop out, we get in the vehicles, and then start taking off towards Quartz Mountain, because right at that cantonment area, there's a hard right. There's a hard right that goes off to Quartz Mountain. And about a mile, half a mile to a mile down that road, it's all dirt road up, by the way, there's this guy. It looks like he's wearing a uniform like we are. He got battle dress uniform on. So he sees us, and he starts to look like he's running, and he's got this really weird run, like his arms are kind of flailing behind him. It's like he was running against the hurricane wind, and it was like he was going to fall over at any time. And I was like, yeah, it's a bit windy today, but it ain't that bad. So it looked really strange, and then I began to notice his skin tone looked like he might be hypothermic. And I'm thinking, oh, crap, this dude's been out here. It's freaking freezing out here, because it was a very cold day, and the wind was blowing. It was, those cold days where it didn't matter how many layers you had on. And so as we're getting closer, I'm talking to the ranking guy, hey, we need to slow down. So anyway, I'm thinking, this guy's probably in big trouble. I need to pull off my jacket. I need to give him something to get warm real quick. So I'm starting to do that, and we're approaching, and by the time I get my jacket most of the way off, he's right there at the corner of the front of the car. And
So he looks pale? Is that what you're saying?
He looked like an albino with a very bluish kind of undertone. If you could imagine,
So you're assuming you're immediately associating that with he's freezing.
Yeah, because that's all I could equate it to.
Right.
And then as I'm starting to open my door to try to administer aid to this guy, the dude in the front passenger seat screams he's got no ears. And I thought that was pretty rude, because I was like, the guy's in trouble.
Does he have a hat on? He's
got a hat on, and he's got BDUs that look absolutely clean, pristine. And when you're uprange, you do not wear your cleanest uniform. You're in a dirty environment. You wear your scuffed up boots. You don't take them with you.
So he's got clean battle dress uniform.
Everything.
United States military
very
uniform.
Out of place. Yeah, it looks very out of place when I finally do it. But anyway, I step out onto the roadway, and this guy screams that he's got no ears. And I just thinking it's really rude. And then I close the door, and I look up, and he's got no freaking ears. And his eyes are twice as big. And I'm like, yeah, what the hell did I just walk into? This guy's not from around here.
How far away from him are you?
Probably from me to
just a few
Logan.
feet.
Yeah, just talking distance.
Okay.
And I'm starting to freak out, but then he starts to talk to me, and it's not my language, but it's coming to the understanding is like coming into my mind about every word he's saying.
So he's actually saying words.
He's saying words, but it doesn't sound like anything I've heard before.
But you're understanding what he's saying.
But I'm understanding. So I know there's a telepathic thing going on here, and it calms me down at the same time, because I'm having to respond to him. And he's like, hello, I'm having trouble with my craft. I need some repair material. Do you know where I could find some tritium? And this is what he's talking to me about. And I'm like, you mean titanium? Because I didn't know anything about tritium at the time. But titanium, he's like, no, it's not it. And I'm like, well, at this point, in my career, I had just left the program, so I knew where Dreamland was, and I pointed to the mountain range because you can see for days in the desert. But I pointed towards the mountain range, and I said, Dreamland's just over there. And this wave of emotion hit me like disgust, like I am not going to talk to those barbarians and murderers. You know. And
wow. So he was saying that to you, like his reaction to going to the military base. Was,
exactly. Yeah. He did not like it. He said, I am not going to talk to those people. And then I was like, well, shoot.
And it was barbarians and murderers?
He literally, that was what he called them, yes. And mentally, that's what it was. But the
is
emotion.
Tritium, is this a real thing?
Well, that's what, I've had a lot of friends. There's analysts also that were on the top secret network that were trying to help me understand what material.
We were throwing everything at him. We're like, is it this? Is it this? And he's
and then
like,
finally,
no.
That's the one. When they hit Tritium, I was like, that's what it was. That's what he said.
And what is Tritium?
It's a type of, well, can he bring it up on the?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because it should pop up on Wikipedia pretty quick. But it has some properties that probably would work.
But are you saying tritium?
Yeah, tritium is, that's the stuff that's in loom. Like in your watch, when your watch glows, that's you know they make those where they're basically like radioactive isotopes that stay lit. So like if you get like a Marathon watch, Marathon makes military watches, and it doesn't need like this watch. You need the light, and the light charges the loom, and then when it's dark out, you could read the hands for like a few hours.
It's the thing that they used to put on the end of the guns, right?
Exactly, they still do. A lot, like SIG has them.
Look
on
up
their guns.
Tritium also. Put an
Tritium
end in
is
there.
just
I did that. That's not giving me much.
So Tritium, chunky glow in the dark glitter.
Yeah,
what is that?
These are all these are game websites.
Oh, I see.
I don't know.
Okay, so it's Tritium. Then I may be mispronouncing.
But tritium that's that radioactive isotope.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff that emits light.
Yep.
So it emits a weak form of radiation.
Yes.
A rare radioactive isotope of hydrogen with a half-life of 12.3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is what he's asking me for.
So he's asking you for that stuff? Tritium?
Yep. And I'm like, I don't know where to get.
Oh, look at that. It's used in boosted fission weapons and thermonuclear weapons. Oh, great.
That sounds reassuring, right?
I wonder what the fuck it's doing on your wrist.
This is what the best image that we have of what he could have looked like.
Oh, boy. Can you send that to Jamie?
Yeah, I don't know Jamie's number, but we'll find a way to.
Is that an iPhone or an
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an iPhone?
If I had my phone, I would, but it's out there, I think.
Yeah, airdrop it to Jamie. Do you know how to do that?
There was
how
that
dare
one.
you not know how to do that?
Oh, and there's a three-dimensional.
Your guy works with UFOs. You better know how to do that.
Well, there's a three-dimensional image of the craft as well that is really spot on from what I saw that day.
Yeah.
Because not only did I see this guy running towards us and talking to him, but off the shoulder on the north side of the roadway, that's where the craft was just resting on the desert floor. And I got a really good look at it at that point. And this guy did a 3D rendering of the description, and it's spot on as I've ever seen. It's almost perfect.
So he asks you for tritium. You tell him this is what it looked like.
This is what the guy looked like. Pretty close to it.
Yo.
The nose was a little bit rounder on the end, but that was a really good rendition. But yeah, his eyes almost came out to here on the temple.
Wow. And that would freak me out.
It freaked me out. I mean, honestly, I'm not an easy guy to get freaked out, but that really put that like you just saw an alligator pop up out of the water kind of thing.
Right. So when you tell him go to Dreamland, it says I'm not going to go where those murderers and barbarians are, and then what happens?
And he said no. So I was like, well, where else can I possibly point him to? Because I'm like, I don't know any metallurgists or whatever. So I'm thinking to myself, and I relate to him. I said, well, I'm taking college classes down in the city of Vegas, Las Vegas, at the community college. But I have a geophysical professor that I'm taking a class from. Maybe he has a metallurgist friend, and he's like,
so you're thinking at this time though it's a metal.
I am, yes.
Right, because you're thinking it's some kind of like titanium, some type of.
Right. And there's also when
This is the 3D image of what the craft looks like?
That is almost as spot on as I've ever seen. That is about it right there. That's almost exactly what I saw resting on the desert floor.
And so you're trying to find different people that you can connect this being to.
Yeah.
And what is it saying to you while you're...
He thought that was a good idea, I think, or he was like, I mean, made him, he had that kind of, and he wanted to take action, so he doesn't really even say goodbye. He just kind of turns and off he goes back to his craft. And I'm thinking, well, okay. And I get back in the car, and sometime during that conversation with this entity, I remembered looking over at my friends in the car, and they had the weirdest look on their face, like they were all zonked out, totally zombied, like they couldn't even, they were just drooling on themselves.
Were they just because they were flabbergasted, or was it because something was going on?
Well, I figured out that maybe it was done by this entity because none of them seemed to even remember the incident. Only a few people seems to remember that we stopped, that we had talked to somebody on the roadway, but it was mainly the people that were in the back of the convoy.
So they didn't see it up close like you did?
Right, like we did. The people
so
that were
how far
right
away
there,
would they be?
They'd probably be a good 2 car lengths behind us.
That's still enough to detect whether or not someone looks blue, though, right?
Correct, and that's probably what they saw. But you know me, I'm kind of wide and I'm big. I was very muscular back then.
And you're standing in front of this thing.
So they'd have a difficult time because this guy stood about a good half foot shorter than me. And so they probably could see his arms from time to time, maybe catch a glimpse of his face or something. So they probably didn't get a very good view because if you're looking at me, I'm standing right next to my door. Mm-hmm. And they're behind me kind of almost obfuscated by just the angle that they're looking at him. So all the windows are tinted in those vehicles.
Mm-hmm.